Thanks, Phil. Early in the program, we discussed the battle over remapping legislative districts, and now we're joined again by State Senator Jason Barickman, State Representatives Tom Demmer, Anna Moeller, and Shawn Ford. Thanks for being back, everybody. Let's talk about the budget. Representative Ford, the governor has talked about closing $1 billion in corporate loopholes to close a $1.3 billion budget gap. Loopholes can be kind of a catch-all term. What are those specific loopholes, and how may it produce the money needed to close that gap?
The governor has proposed the budget cuts or corporate loopholes that we should agree on as a body, because there is a $1.3 billion deficit. So we talked earlier about funding K-12 education at a higher level. We can't do that if we don't find the money. And so the governor has talked about removing some of the federal tax breaks that have been given and handed down through the state, which is great. Capping the corporate deductions, that's great. Aligning the treatment of foreign sources as a means to cut corporate loopholes. I think we have to reset the tax credit scholarship fund for school districts. We have to look at that. Cap retail discounts. There's a lot of cuts or corporate loopholes that the governor is talking about rolling back, and we should look at them, and we should not be closed on them.
Senator Barickman, is this the best way to close that budget gap?
Well, first of all, I think the notion that there's a budget gap is a wild misnomer. And look, this is good news for the state. The reality is that the budget forecasts show that there's much more revenue coming into the state than was originally forecast. That's good news. It also means there's plenty of money. You add to that the fact that the federal government is providing, it was very controversial, but the reality is the federal government's providing about $8 billion in additional funds to the state. So what that means is there's plenty of money here. There's no need for tax increases, as the governor has proposed. There's no need. What the governor calls, loopholes and otherwise are things like scholarships for low-income students who attend failing schools. I think that's a disastrous policy to cut. We need to do more of that and support our kids in our schools, especially our low-income children that are in failing schools.
So disagreement here on just what those corporate loopholes entail, or whether or not they're good or not. Representative Moeller, the state did get by on a lot of short-term borrowing through COVID. And now the U.S. Treasury is saying some of that $8 billion the state wants to use to pay down those debts. It's not allowed to use it to pay down debts. Do you think the state will be able to pay down these significant short-term debt obligations with some of that federal aid coming in?
Well, we don't know, and that's the problem. And so we can't budget as if we can. We have to assume that at this point that we're not going to be able to use that $8 billion to pay off debt. And we know that our backlog of bills is still in the multi-billion-dollar range. I believe somewhere around $6 billion. So the idea that we don't have to make the wealthiest corporations in our state pay their fair share for vital public services, I think is disingenuous. And let's be honest, the corporate loopholes that we're talking about closing are not those that affect scholarships for kids. These are corporate loopholes that affect multi-billion-dollar international companies that have benefited, that were treated special under the Trump administration in his last tax cut when he was in office. And we're merely trying to decouple from that federal tax cut so that we can pay for education and for helping seniors and for helping the developmentally disabled access the services that they need. All services, all programs that have been in jeopardy and have been stressed during COVID, and because of the longstanding time under Rauner when we didn't have a budget in the state.
All right.
So there's a lot that we need to make up for, and a lot we need to invest in.
If history is a guide, we'll learn a lot about the budget at the 11th hour in Springfield before the session ends. I got to jump to the issue of ethics. The Commonwealth Edison bribery scandal has former ComEd lobbyists and an executive indicted, plus the former Speaker of the House, Michael Madigan. He's implicated, not charged in court documents. As a result, lawmakers are calling for ethics reforms.
This isn't just about a few outliers taking bribes or breaking rules. This is about fundamentally reforming the system that doesn't allow us to police our own house. I believe it's un-American, it's unfair, and it's just fundamentally wrong.
Representative Demmer, I mean, they're competing ethics proposals here, but a base issue is trying to prevent lawmakers from becoming lobbyists right after they step down from their legislative career. Will there be an ethics bill that tackles that?
There certainly should be. This ethics issue has been brewing in Springfield for more years than most of us can count. And time again, we've come to the table with specific legislative proposals to try to change the culture of corruption in Springfield. Even more fundamental than the question of whether legislators can become lobbyists when they leave is a question of whether a legislator can be a lobbyist while they're currently in office. That practice is allowed today. That practice directly led to legal troubles for a former representative. And it's a practice that I sought to stop with a bill that I introduced in the House last year. Unfortunately, in this long drawn out process of trying to water down ethics reforms, those proposals have never been given a vote. They've been set aside with the idea that some larger bill was coming at a later date. The danger in all this, though, is that the more time that elapses between the jaw-dropping arrests that happen, the bombshell reports that come through, the more opportunity there is for people who want to see the status quo preserved to water down those reforms. We need serious ethics reform in Springfield, and the time is now for that to happen.
All right, there's a lot on your plate. There's only a few weeks left in session. We'll see how this all shakes out. But for now, our thanks to State Senator Jason Barickman and State Representatives Tom Demmer, Anna Moeller, and Shawn Ford.